think one of the best things that describes Ram is Bengan Swaraj. So he's written this book called the Bengan Swaraj, which means the Brinjal Swaraj, Brinjal self-governance, based on how Monsanto kind of came in the country and fighting for the rural economies. He's done extensive work in building self-reliant rural economies, which is also very much in line with the theme of Swaraj. So I would not take any more time because we're running short of time, and with that, welcome you, Ram.
This is like being in a familiar territory to talk about something that I don't talk about now. I am more often in Auroville talking about the work we do in Auroville. And eventually earlier said 20 years association with Auroville, but coming from a Gandhian background. Now this is a problem I'll have to decide sometime, and I have kind of cruised along without having been easy to introduce in most parts. Because just sitting here since morning and listening to amazing presentations, I mean, I worked closely with Aurobindo and Jasmine, Arvinda and Jasmine. And listening to Arvinda this morning was fantastic. I mean, there was a moment when it felt so complete. He was holding everybody together in his sharing, which is so beautiful. I just thought, after this, why should anybody talk? And we could just all sit silently with him and just be. It was great. And the last couple of presentations on Auroville, bringing out the essence of Auroville and the society's work, and so brilliantly, I think, broken it down to what it is. I'm not presenting anything that profound or trying to hold you all with that kind of intensity. Increasingly, I am asking people to introduce me as a storyteller. I am getting to the point where I am mostly sharing stories. And because I recognize today that what we seem to not have or have not energized adequately today is this human-to-human storytelling tradition, which is part of our culture, which is this entire society, this nation, this civilization abounds in human-to-human storytelling. When we have people who have been telling stories in this region, the Sirupana Rattrapadai, which is known to some people here, where people went from village to village singing the stories of the village, of the biota in the village, and it is all documented in this region. And increasingly today, it is, I find in my own journey, very difficult to write anything. When you mentioned about Bengan Swaraj, actually I put I should confess that I put two Swaraj. I thought I was being very smart when I did the title of the book, by actually putting a two as a symbol than to say Bengan to Swaraj. But unfortunately nobody captured it, so it was an absolutely great failure on my part to think I'm being too smart there. But basically the idea was to capture a dialogue between an ordinary citizen and the bureaucrat, the scientist, the policymaker, the politician. And these are all dialogues I have witnessed, I have sat through. And all the arguments that I had put down were real arguments. These are not fictional. I wrote it as a semi-fictional kind of a dialogue between a citizen asking a simple question to a scientist. Why should I consume genetically modified brinjal? And then starting from there, a dialogue on what is this story of pesticides, where do the pesticides come from, why should a government produce pesticide, why are we talking about... So each one of these leads you to have a dialogue. And that is what stories do. Stories create dialogues. Dialogues creates possibilities. And today, uh, I am a victim of the, I would say I'm a beneficiary as well as a victim of the large-scale explosion of the communication technology space today. Because the last 3-4 years I have been finding it very difficult to write anything significant. And the reason I find it difficult to write is because dialogues have become so difficult today. We are living in a space where opinions precede knowledge. And dialogues are replaced with abuse in many places. And this is increasingly becoming day to day quite apparent for us to talk about. So I start storytelling because story is easier to start a dialogue. So I start with the story. Yesterday I was in Coimbatore. I was called to inaugurate a social entrepreneur program. As you know, social entrepreneur is a very interesting development. It's been going on for 25 years now. And the best thing is we are not defined what is a social entrepreneur. And we keep telling them. Now there are academic papers telling you why you cannot define who is a social entrepreneur. You know? And it's very interesting to be part of this program. And so they had an innovation lab in one of the engineering colleges that was hosting this program. And they took me around and they showed me this innovation. And there was this bunch of young engineers. And they have developed a very small device. And basically, this is a device that a young man explained it to me. You go to hospital these days, they put this drips on, right? And the problem with the drips is that this is something that they do to everybody now. Once a nurse does it, particularly in government hospitals, she goes on a round. Maybe the whole thing drains off. The whole thing drains off, she has to come and change it. And she cannot, if she doesn't change it on time, there is a problem. The problem is, there is a worry that the blood might go out from the body, or there will be a swelling caused. And this young man, in the first year engineering, has come up with a solution. He put a small weighing scale on top of the string that normally suspends the drips. You know, he put a small weighing scale, and then he attached a small electronic device next to it. So what it does is, it weighs as the liquid goes down, it weighs it. And then after it reaches a point, that electronic signal sends a SMS to the nurse saying, on so-and-so bed, so-and-so patient, you have to change now. I asked him, why did you do this? It looks such a common sense. It is a nice innovation. This looks like common sense. So I asked him, why did you do this? And then this guy says, sir, I went with my uncle often to hospital. He often went and got himself admitted in hospital. And I have seen this happen to him often. And so I thought I should solve this problem. I said, why? It could have been for your uncle, but why did you think that you should create a device to do it? You could have been sitting there solving it for him. And then he tells me, but if this happened to my uncle, it must be happening to a lot of people. I didn't think of this as an enterprise or an innovation. I was trying to see how is it that I can use the knowledge that I have to do something different. To somehow I can solve this. Now, as innovations go, this is not a big innovation. This is not a great one. But what for me was amazing is first year engineering. Somebody thinks this must be there for everybody. Here is my opportunity. Can I do something to solve? Now, whenever I talk about Gandhi, I learned whatever I did little of Gandhi from Dharampal, who was a Gandhian historian. And Dharampal taught us a few interesting things about Gandhi. He said, in fact, last year somebody asked me to summarize in 3 bullet points Gandhian idea of action. So in my own foolishness, I attempted it. And because it's difficult. I mean, Gandhi's work goes into 100 volumes. Somebody mentioned Sri Aurobindo's work is in 40 volumes, right? And Gandhi is like 100 volumes, and you cannot. You can go on. You can spend several lifetimes. And I remember, you cannot go on reading much. So I try to summarize. The first thing that I have tried to put down, and this is often very interesting for me, is the faith in the capacity of ordinary people in this country. And for me, in the last 15, 20 years, I have been working with a lot of ordinary movements, grassroots movements. Time and again, what has been reinforced is the concept and the idea of what is the right thing to do that our ordinary people have. The thing that drove Vinoba to walk and engage with ordinary people, not with the professors, not with the intellectuals. The thing that drove Baba Ahamti to go and stay put in a village. This is this capacity to have faith in the ordinary people of the land. This is what drove Gandhi to launch each one of his movements with this faith in the capacity of ordinary people. What is this capacity? And I have found this capacity, for lack of better word, I call it a sense of dharma. And the reason I call it a sense of dharma is there is something in the ordinary about the soil, about the land, about the way people grow up in this land, which makes people say, this is the right thing to do. Otherwise, why would a young engineer with no idea of whether this will be recognized, whether this will be done? I asked him, how long did you work? And this man tells me, I was working on it at least for 6 months. Sir. I kept trying various things. Something drives him to say, no, I have to do this. It is not an ambition. It is not to achieve something in technology. It is something that he thinks will resolve somebody else's pain. Because he told me this is a pain point that I'm trying to resolve. That's a term that he used, which is beautiful. And this is for me one of the crux of any conscious work that I see today. I mean, when I saw the title, frankly, I got the mail about the title of the presentation. I'm supposed to make others a bit overwhelmed, frankly, because to talk about conscious action in Auroville, I don't think I have grown up to the level of being able to talk, because I am telling stories. But time and again, what I find reinforcement is there are these people among us, there are these people in the larger society which you engage with in the course of working with villagers, in the course of working with government officials, who see this is the right thing to do at any point. And they don't have a language for it. They don't have a concept for it. Because we often look at philosophy, concept, action. We have a linearity of how we explain things, right? Or a philosopher's institution to society, action. We have this linearity of how we explain. The beauty is to see that there is this vast multitude of people. If you look at them all as practitioners at various levels of understanding and maturity, then you have this capacity, you have this enormous faith. I mean, today my faith is in this capacity. Whenever I see people taking this action, I'm amazed. I'll tell you another story. I was called once to, in fact I want to start, one of the trouble is, if you're working with too many people, you have a lot of stories to tell. And so I ask time all the time. I said, how much time do you have? So I was once called to inaugurate something called the Integrity Club with young children. And they called me because they said, well, you're come and talk about Gandhi. I said, what is the Integrity Club? Because I had no idea what it is. It is in a government school, and in a corporation school, they had this shop in which all materials that the school kids will need is kept. And you are supposed to put as much money as you want to take something. You want to take a pencil or a pen, you just put exact amount into the box, and you take what you want and you walk away. And so I went there, and they said, we want to talk about how to behave, how to be integral in what you do to the children. So I went and asked these children, so tell me, who is the most corrupt person you guys have seen in your life? These are school children, right? So, and they said policeman. And I said, "Chalo, who else? Doctor. Then lawyer." I was amazed, doctor and lawyer. I thought I have heard this before somewhere. So what happened? I kind of told these children, these are all corporation kids in Chennai city school, between the grade of 5 and 8. And I asked him, so there is this, you are not the first people to say this. 100 years ago, somebody has maintained this. Somebody has said this. And do you think you can guess who must have said this 100 years back? So one young girl in the 7th grade, she puts up her hand and she says, Gandhi? I said, have you read Gandhi? And she says, no. How do you know it is Gandhi? And then she tells me, and this is very important, she says, anything good that must have been said anybody in the last 100 years must be Gandhi. Now, I'm amazed at this insight this young kid has got in this world. I mean, these are kids who have not studied. This is for me, the affirmation comes from these engagements. The people recognize, and if they cannot put a name to it, and they think this is the right thing to do, they put the name of Gandhi on top of it. This is the beauty of the land, this is the beauty of the people, that you are propelled to do something when you see something is not right around you. And you call it by whatever name you. If you had the luxury or if you had the privilege of being in a spiritual tradition or going through a spiritual education, then you can articulate it, you can talk about everything is connected and being in the awareness of things being connected. I'm not saying that everybody reaches this level of articulation quickly enough. It takes time for people to reach this. But they are struggling in their own voices getting there. So, the second point that I put down last year, which I want to talk about, is capacity to engage with everybody, particularly the adversary. I put down that as another of the Gandhian trait which I have seen. Because this is something that everybody seems to have done, to take on this beautiful story that you mentioned just now. I mean, this is so essential in the way somebody engages with an adversary. When she went and spoke to the Gunda in the village, this is something that is repeatedly, I have found that this is something that has defined the way Gandhians have approached. You are not compromising your position when you are engaging with an adversary. I engage a lot with government officials today who are talking about development or who represent development. The reason, as you know, if there is anybody who is really the last person to think about development today is a government official. And I mean, I'm saying it knowing that I'm being reported. Because challenge today is the system of government that we have does not permit us to really put people above everything that we do. But at some point, there is a need to engage with them, there is a need to change them, because if the government does not change today, with the kind of climate emergency we are talking about and the kind of challenges that we foresee happening around us, more people will be put into more suffering in the near future. So I often mention that to not engage with government is not a choice that we have, because they work at the scale which many of us do not, we cannot even imagine in our wildest dreams. So that way it is important to engage. The third, so that is, I just want to, on that front, maybe I can give a few examples of what we have seen the engagement brings through the experiment that we have here at the Sustainable Livelihood Institute. which is now 5 years old. And often we bring government officials to sensitize them on what is sustainability. They come here, they engage with us, they spend about 4 days, 5 days with us, and then they go back. Like I said, governments are the most difficult ones to change. But in fact, we put down very simply in our motto, we just said gentle change to sustainability. Because we recognize that a radical change is possible for individuals. For systems, it has to be gentle. And government is a system you can't wish away tomorrow. It exists, it will continue to exist. So what we do is we have these conversations between Aurovilians and government officials. So I'll give you maybe 2 or just 3 instances. There's this young man from a government official who came here. His pride till he came here is that he has planted about 1,500 trees in his life. And he was very proud about it. So he came here and we have this visit to various Auroville units. So we have structured programs where we ask them to be silent. Well, government likes to talk. So we tell them, this next 1.5 hours you'll be silent. So one of the silent times we give them is walking with Joss Brooks in Pichanikulam forest early in the morning. Walking in a forest early in the morning is magical. To have a privilege of walking with a person who created the forest is not something a government official can actually think about in his life. So we tell them, walk with him, don't talk. Don't ask him silly questions like how many acres, what is the price of each acre, because that's what government officials think normally. So don't ask him questions, just listen to him. After 1.5 hours, sit and reflect. So Joss asked this very simple questions. He asked these people, so how many trees have you planted in life? This is Joss' concern in life. If he thinks everybody is planting trees, then life is done, good, world is good. And so Joss is asking how many trees you have planted. And this man put up, because among his contemporaries, he has done something better. So he said, I have planted 1,500 trees in my life. Joss said, very good. He thought Joss will appreciate him. And Joss said, last week we planted about 45,000 trees. And this man was completely shattered. Even, how old are you? 72. And at 72 you planted 45,000 trees last week alone? Yes. Okay. He went back. 6 months later he quit his job. And today, in the last 5 years, he has launched an institution in his district. He has planted 3 lakh trees in his district alone. And he invited me for the first anniversary of his institution. When the district collector was there and I was there, and in front of the collector he told me that, this man, I went to him for training and he converted me completely. And then I told him, sir, now my job is coming to an end with the government, what should I do? And he said, don't join another government job, which is what I told him actually. I told him, don't take up another job. You have found a passion in life, just pursue that, do it. And the beauty is, once you get into one aspect of things, everything else seems to be falling in place. And that's what he said to me. I asked him, how are you supporting yourself? At the end of the program, I asked him this question. He says, to be honest, sir, I haven't been thinking about it. It is given to me. I said, how about your family? I was surprised. My wife is also now fully convinced about what I'm doing. Last time I had to plant some trees and I did not have money to buy the saplings. And she said, well, if you are sure you'll get the money, take my jewelry, just, take some loan out of it and go ahead, plant it. This is one story of one official who has been converted after being in a program here. And I can cite you any number of stories. Today I would say with a lot of confidence in the last 5 to 6 years what we have built, I have at least 65 to 70 middle level officials in the government. Each one of them is practicing something that he's picked up here. Whether he's calling it conscious action, whether he's talking about his own spiritual growth in the process, whether he's ascribing it to even learning here or I don't know. Many of them are in their journeys. I find this is an encounter. This encounter is important. And these encounters are transforming people. And it's changing the way they act completely. Most often than not, I go to districts and I get shown their water bottles and, sir, we have stopped using flex banners. Plastic banners we don't put any longer. Sir, we have stopped distributing plastic bottles. We are carrying our own bottles. From that, it has slowly moved. 2 weeks ago, I sat in a policy-making body with the state government, where they are now saying, on farming front, eco-friendly or sustainable farming would be the only one that will get the incentive. Incentives will not go for other types of farming any longer. This is a very large-scale policy that the government is taking right now, and this is very interesting. Because what happens is, after a point, you see that around a table in policy making, there are like these 15 people sitting, and you know that each one of them has been here. And each one of them has had an engagement with somebody else. I mean, I can talk about the higher level official who has had a conversation with Suhasini sitting on the platform here in CSR. I can talk about people who have had this. Tom once came and gave a talk on water. And one man was completely moved at the end of it. I was here sitting worried about whether they can actually pick up Tom's speaking, because Tom talks English with a very French accent. So I was worried about it. And at the end of it, there's this government official who tells me, this is the most moving thing anybody has told me on water. And this man is so passionate about water. Same with Krishna and solitude. People who come to visit Krishna and completely get transformed. So the reason I'm telling that is, there is a conscious shift that happens within people, because they find a truth in them that is touched when they come here. There is a truth that is triggered somewhere. And that's why I always look at it as, that everybody's got this capacity. It is not a capacity that is only descending from a philosophy or a path of knowledge alone. The path of action also leads towards eventually people arriving at that awareness or that learning. Yeah, the last part of what I had to say, there is 3 points. The last point is never give up a sense of humor. Because if I have to define Gandhi, I always say, the man had a great sense of humor. The amount of sense of humor that you see in the way he engages with the people, the way he's talking to people. Last week I was talking to somebody who has been with Vinoba. And Vinoba is like when you read about Vinoba, you think he must be like the strict school teacher or something. He's like worse than Gandhi. You read Vinoba in books. He's tough man. And then last week I was talking to Loganathanji, the Asifa founder here. And he tells me, I was meeting Vivinabaji one day in the ashram, Pavanar. And as soon as he saw me, he started dancing and singing a Tamil song. He's heard a Tamil song and he was dancing, singing that Tamil song. As soon as he saw Logan, and say, Vanakkam, Vanakkam. Because Vinoba was multilingual, he could talk so many languages. I think there is a sense of humor which keeps you light, which is required for most people who are in the spiritual journey. And with engaging with ordinary people, this is what I often find gets you the entry ticket. You often can make enough jokes about yourself and you can easily find your way to their heart. And if a joke is on you, nobody's hurt anyway. But the thing is, I find that we, at some time when we talk about, how do we manifest spiritual understanding into action, we tend to get very esoteric about it. We tend to feel that this is some small group of people who are arriving at this awareness which is to manifest. That it may happen. But what I'm saying is, there is a stardust in every one of us, every one of these people out there. And in recognizing that, we are able to build movements, we are able to create changes. This year we had the Panchayat election, the local body election in Tamil Nadu. And a good friend of mine who keeps track of these things told me recently that there are about 150 organic farmers who have become Panchayat leaders in Tamil Nadu. I was amazed. And somebody else tells me, I was addressing a group of Panchayat leaders a couple of weeks ago, and amazing women. Whole lot of leadership is now shifted to women. Of course, government mandates 50% should be women leaders now. But if you look at the kind of commitment they have towards addressing issues that are related to environment or ecology, it is amazing to see women articulate and take the leadership in generating action. One of them invites me to her village and says, I have a plan for a green village. I came thinking of too many things, and then when I sat through all these amazing presentations, I said, being the last speaker, I have the flexibility. I can tell stories. And I can drop off trying to, because a few things, but I have to share a few things that is of concern also right now, because I think we are not people who have this awareness of what is conscious action, people who can theorize some of the highlights of how spirituality manifests in the day-to-day work of our ordinary people are not articulate enough, are not enough people around. They are not theorizing often enough. This is something that I keep wondering about all the time. Because we are still telling our people, you are not good enough, you are below poverty line, you are illiterate, you are underprivileged, you are this, you are that. There are millions of labels to disempower. There are not enough labels to seriously energize our ordinary people. And I think this is what Gandhi did. What Gandhi did, what he energized the recognition of the truth within each one of them. In the smallest thing you can do, whether I'm spinning, I think I'm doing something that changing the colonial country. By spinning I can do that. By getting arrested I could do it. By just sitting silently in dharna I could do it. This means he was actually taking the actions that every person with the least of the power, least of access to power, least of access to any great ideas or concepts could also practice and think that he is part of something bigger. Every day and every moment is Women's Day in Auroville. I mean, I have so many women who I know are great leaders here who are doing amazing work in Auroville. I mean, हमको तो ऐसा छोड़ना चाहिए भाई. I mean, काय को. Anyway, so what I wanted to say was there is a breadth of academic work. There is a breadth of scholarship. There is a breadth of standing up. I mean, I saw this, I think, in Shiva's presentation. He spoke about creatively knowing and flowing and then creatively addressing. That's beautiful, the way you put it. Creatively theorizing what our people are doing, with all respect to their sentiments, to their values that they are sensitive to, is something that we are not doing adequately enough. Today, what I find increasingly is when I get a call late last evening, I just landed here, I got a call from a friend in the other end of the world saying, I'm sitting among indigenous people trying to conserve seeds in South America. And she says, they are quoting Gandhi. I thought of you, so I thought I should call you. They talk about food sovereignty and seed conservation, and they are setting up a seed bank here. And they were quoting Gandhi repeatedly. I said, wow, that's great. Yeah. But things, we have not yet started theorizing based upon our own tenets, our own background. Whether we are talking about the Purusharthas or they want to take the Koshas. These are frameworks that we have in our Vedanta, in our scriptures. In fact, we did a very interesting experiment. I'll stop with this, maybe this is a good point to stop. I had a colleague from Britain who was here working with me for almost a couple of years now. She left recently, but she was trying to understand how does transformation happen in Auroville. So she did this series of interviews with Manoj, several people around Auroville, trying to understand what is the transformation process of Auroville. And she comes from a very Western academic background. So she said, after a while, she looked at this examples, and then she said, look, there is nothing common about anything. No single person is saying anything. The way they get, how people transform, or how people know how or learn, each one is saying it differently. So I asked her, fine, how are you defining learning? And then we got into problems. Then I said, can you look at the Indian frameworks of learning? And can we borrow from there? Then she looked at it and then she said, yes. Because in the Indian framework, intuition is also a way of learning. You have somebody says something who has worked for a long time as a vachan, that is also taken as truth. Now, you don't have this in other frameworks. So she said, wow, I mean, I found something. And then she came back after almost 3 weeks and she said, you know what, if I had only gone back to Aurobindo, I find that I could explain all of this. I said, great, now that you have found it, now you explain it. So the reason I mentioned that is there are very, very few attempts of doing this. Even in Auroville, we don't have enough theorizing of what we do happening for the larger world today. Because my own experience and understanding is, I think this is something that needs to be said today. I'm not into the romantic idea of this is an Indian age and all that nonsense. I mean, I don't subscribe to that. But when I look around the world, I think there is a need for this to be said today. Not from the portals of the Indian universities, but from the farms of India, from the village communities of India that have managed their resources for 30 years, 100 years, from the practices that are deeply embedded in our culture, whether the way we manage our temples. I mean, Idenjavadi, the way they manage the temples, for instance, is one of the most interesting stories. I don't know how many people in Auroville even know about how Idenjavadi manages its temples. We don't know, right? Because we think that somebody has to go through a certain gate or a barrier for them to be recognized as knowledge holders. That there is a spark that is there in all of them, has to be recognized. And in recognizing them, I think is the greatest honoring of our spiritual traditions and the leaders of spiritual nature, such as Gandhi, because that's what Gandhi did. He recognized that there is a spark in every one of them. And he built an entire movement, not just an institution, out of them. And that's what Vinoba did later. I mean, every one of the Gandhian movements subsequently seem to have relied upon this. And in placing that at the center, I feel is the future not just for us today as a society, but for a lot of planet, because people are struggling to articulate this across the world. Because this truth is also recognized by many of them in other parts of the world. They recognize this.